Karlie Guse was born on the 13th of May 2002 to parents Lindsay Fairley and Zach Guse, who separated when she was just 2 years old. A few years later, Zach met a woman called Melissa Phillips. They went on to get married and have 2 boys together. For much of her childhood, Karlie lived with her mum, but later chose to move in with her dad, stepmom, and 2 younger brothers in Bishop, California. Shortly before Karlie's disappearance, the family moved to Chalfont, just 14 miles from Bishop. This area is so remote and is surrounded by vast desert and mountains. Karlie continued to go to school in Bishop, and when she wasn't studying, she worked part-time alongside her stepmom Melissa. Known for a fun-loving spirit and great sense of humour, Karlie was popular and well-liked at school, despite her introverted and quiet nature. On the evening of the 12th of October 2018, Karlie told her parents that she was going to a football game at her high school in Bishop. It's unclear if attending the game was actually the intention at all, or whether they got sidetracked, but instead she attended a house party with her boyfriend of 6 months, Donald Arrowwood, with some other friends at James Doolan's home. Although the two hadn't been together long, Karlie and Donald shared a deep connection, having known each other since preschool. During the party, however, Karlie smoked weed, which caused her to behave abnormally and frantically. Although smoking weed wasn't anything new to Karlie, it had been a while since she last used. This time, however, she became panicked, scared, and paranoid. Donald reported that she expressed feelings of intense fear of the music and of him, and became convinced that she was being tracked on her phone. In an effort to calm her down, Donald took Karlie back to his house. He tried comforting her with a hug, but her fear of Donald escalated, resulting in her biting him and telling him not to come near her. She was near impossible to console, so in distress she called Melissa at 8:30 p.m, asking her to come and pick her up immediately. This confused Melissa, however, as only half an hour earlier, Melissa had called Karlie asking if she needed a lift home that night. Karlie told her no and that her boyfriend Donald would bring her home. Concerned by Karlie's urgency and reluctancy to hang up, Melissa hurried to the location that Karlie provided. Upon arrival, however, she found Karlie running down Dixon Road alone. Once in the car, Karlie's unsettling behaviour became even more evident. She was as pale as a ghost with dilated pupils and expressed her fear that the car or Melissa driving too fast would kill her, all while switching seats multiple times. At home, her erratic behaviour continued, fluctuating between affection to her dad and stepmom 1 minute to intense fear the next. Karlie admitted to smoking weed at the party, but given her abnormal behaviour at the time, Zach believed that she was either having an adverse reaction, as it had been some time since she last used, but was more convinced that the weed was laced with another substance. Melissa prepared a salad for Karlie, but she dismissed it, calling it devil's lettuce, and insisted she needed to read the Bible. Karlie's strange behaviour led Melissa to secretly record her, hoping to show her later how erratic she had been while under the influence. She thought that maybe in the future it would deter her from using again. The full 8-minute and 45-second audio has never been publicly released, but I did come across this shorter snippet.
This is the audio of Karlie, and it's in my pocket, so it's kind of loud and scuffly.
Melissa, do you want to take a shower? Think it'll make you feel better? No? You're gonna kill me. Karlie, listen to what you just said to me. What? You said you're going to kill me. Don't kill me. Why would I kill you? That's preposterous. That's ridiculous. I'm eating the devil's lettuce. You're eating lettuce that I just freshly chopped that I bought from the grocery store. I don't know why. I'm just. Why you would think it's the devil's lettuce? Because I'm just thinking all these demonic stuff and I can't help it. You're okay. You wouldn't call them? Why would you look at me like that? Well, you just said you wouldn't. Would you call them? 911? For what reason? If there was an emergency? If there was an emergency, yes, I would always call 911. Yeah. Why are you scaring me? I don't know. Just don't look at my face. I have to look at you. No, you don't. Is it because I'm ugly? No, you're not. You're beautiful. You're not ugly. I'm sorry. I love you. I love you too. It's gonna be okay.
Tragically, Melissa never did get to play the audio back to Karlie. Donald texted Melissa asking if Karlie was okay, to which she replied at 1:27 a.m, "Please pray." Karlie's dad Zach checked on her at around 3:30 a.m. and saw that she was just laid with her eyes wide open, and Melissa had also said that she too saw Karlie just laid with her eyes wide open. Donald texted Melissa again at 5:16 a.m, asking if Karlie was okay. This time, Melissa replied, "No, not really." Melissa then fell asleep and later woke at around 7:15 to 7:30 a.m. to discover that 16-year-old Karlie was missing. She searched the house. She wasn't in her bed, she wasn't in the bathroom, she wasn't anywhere downstairs. But then when she noticed that the front door was slightly open, she was just overcome with panic. She quickly woke Zach up, and both Melissa and Zach jumped in their cars and drove around the surrounding area in hopes of finding Karlie walking down the street, possibly just to try and clear her head from the night before. They also knocked on neighbours' doors, slowly canvassing the area, but after 2 hours and no trace of Karlie, they returned home, where Zach phoned Karlie's mum, Lindsay, to inform her of their daughter's disappearance. From hearing this news, Lindsay made her way straight to the Guse household. Meanwhile, Melissa contacted the police.
Melissa, how old is your daughter?
16.
What's her name?
Karlie.
How long has she been missing?
I last saw her at 5:30 this morning, and then a neighbor saw her walking down the street at 6:30.
Do you know what she was last wearing?
Skinny jeans and sweater.
Do you think she ran away or something?
No.
Investigators found no signs of forced entry to the home, and since there was no indication of abduction, an Amber Alert wasn't issued. All of Karlie's belongings had been left behind on the kitchen counter, where she'd left them the night before, including cash, glasses, and her phone. A search began that afternoon, utilising a helicopter, off-road vehicles, and volunteers. Unfortunately, searches of the surrounding area were unsuccessful in locating Karlie. So over the next couple of days, cadaver dogs, more helicopters, and the FBI were brought in. Typically, a missing child case would see a 72-hour search, but the search for Karlie lasted a week. After this time, and once they suspended the search, they took a more investigative role, with volunteers still searching by foot. They searched through Karlie's phone in hopes of discovering new leads, from which they found a text to Donald indicating that Karlie too thought that the weed was laced. So had she maybe left that morning still feeling the effects and paranoia? Some speculate, however, that this may have been Melissa texting Donald from Karlie's phone in an attempt to get Donald to confirm that it had been laced. But Donald was adamant that it was just weed, and that everyone else smoked the same thing from the same bong, and nobody else became unwell. Private investigators also continued to search the surrounding areas, including the vast rugged desert and White Mountains. To this day, 6.5 years later, Karlie has never been found, nor has she ever contacted friends and family. 3 individuals reported possible sightings of her on the morning of her disappearance, the first of which Melissa spoke to while out searching for Karlie that morning. He was a retired motorcycle officer named Richard Eddy, who lived near the Guse household. He claims to have seen Karlie that morning between 6:30 and 6:45, and remembers thinking that it was very strange. She was only in a t-shirt and joggers, yet it was no more than 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius outside. He was sipping his coffee while in his jacuzzi at the time of seeing the young female, and also hinted at her odd behaviour, stating she was looking around at the sky. He mentioned seeing Karlie in grey joggers and a white t-shirt. However, if you remember, Melissa stated in her 911 call that Karlie was wearing jeans. Melissa had already spoke to Richard that morning about the disappearance too, before making the 911 call. So it was a little strange that she stated jeans, especially seeing as she didn't actually see Karlie before Karlie left the house, to even know what she had been wearing.
It was kind of chilly that morning, I remember, and for some reason I looked out towards the street. I have big windows in the hot tub room, so I looked out towards the street and I thought, that's unusual. There's a young girl walking by. She had long brown hair. She had clothes on. She had a white, I can't even remember, but I think she had a white top and maybe gray bottoms or something. But she had clothes on, but it was kind of chilly, and I thought, that's kind of weird that she would be there. And she was waving a piece of paper, like a 12 by 12 piece of paper. She was just waving it in the air and walked by. Now,
another witness also mentioned seeing a girl carrying a piece of paper that morning. Kenneth Dutton, a school teacher, was in his driveway when he claims to have seen Karlie walk towards Highway 6, holding a piece of paper in her hand. The third and final witness hasn't been publicly named, but a woodworker was driving down Highway 6 at around 7:30 that morning, and they claimed to have seen a girl fitting Karlie's description. She was standing behind a barbed wire fence by Highway 6. This was also very close to where the dogs reportedly lost her scent. The 2-lane route leads to Bishop and stretches towards some of Nevada's loneliest desert. Officers concluded that Karlie likely headed south towards the highway. A checkpoint was established along Highway 6, but despite 50 people sharing they'd passed through the area on the 13th of October, none recalled seeing anyone matching Karlie's description. So what had happened to Karlie? Did she wander into the desert? Did she get into a car? Maybe voluntarily, or dread to think, involuntarily. These are just a few of the theories that emerged in the weeks following Karlie's disappearance. Zach, Karlie's dad, believes in 2 of these potential theories.
With this disappearance, one of 2 things happened. And I know that for sure. One of 2 things. I used to think one of 3, but I threw the third one out because I don't believe she ran away. I think she would have been found. I don't think she's that smart. She was 16. I mean, I don't even know if I could run away. So I finally threw that one away. And I'm down to 2 things. I'm down to she either crossed that desert so far that nobody found her, or she was abducted. She got in the wrong car and with the wrong person. And I'd like to say to that person that may God be with you. May God forgive you. Because I won't. At all. I don't know if that's right to say or not. I don't know, but that's what I wanted to say.
There is the possibility that Karlie was abducted that morning for trafficking. And as disturbing as that scenario and thought is, it at least holds hope that Karlie is still alive. Some other slightly more morbid theories also surfaced, especially from Lindsay, her biological mum, and from the public via the internet, but we will get onto those shortly. Posters and banners with Karlie's photo and description were displayed all over, in stores, in diners, and in gas stations all across Eastern California, in hopes that somebody would eventually recognise her. An age progression photo that can be seen here was recently released in 2022 on Karlie's 20th birthday. Melissa took to Facebook 10 hours into the search, posting lives urging for help from others to find her 16-year-old stepdaughter. Probably a really sensible thing to do to gain attention to the case. Obviously, the more eyes on the case, the better in terms of finding a missing person. However, many remarked Melissa's demeanour was very suspicious.
My name is Melissa Guse. If you're going to watch this video, please do not have the kids around. Karlie Guse is missing still. She's been missing since... Breathe. She's been missing since 6:30 a.m. The last time that I spoke to her was 5:30. She didn't take her cell phone. We're coming up on 10 hours. And now is the part where I'm saying I have to do something, and I see all your faces popping up and it makes me want to cry. I love you guys. And I'm putting this out there because it's going on 10 hours that she's been missing. And I want to put this on blast because I don't think she's out in the desert. I think that she could have been abducted or taken because we do live by a highway and it happens, and I'm being real. Hold on. Let's do this good. Wait, there she is. She's 5'7", about 115 pounds. She has blue eyes and the cutest little nose and a great smile. And her hair goes all the way down past her, like, to her belly, let's say, mid-waist. And this was last year's picture. Shows you she's a little bit different, but not much. She's still, like, adorably cute. She doesn't wear makeup and everything. She left in her jeans and a t-shirt. So just go for it. Everybody help me out here. I love you all. Everybody please watch, share, your friends share, my friends share. Everybody just share the shit out of it.
This discrepancy, along with the confusion over what Karlie was wearing, led to public scepticism. Zach and Melissa appeared on TV show Dr. Phil in 2019, also raising suspicions when Melissa's story suddenly changed. Melissa had initially claimed that on the morning of Karlie's disappearance, Melissa carried out her usual routine at 5:45 a.m. of opening the kids' doors and saying good morning to wake them up for school. At this time, Karlie was in bed, so Melissa went back to bed and slept. But that morning was a Saturday, so why would they need waking up for school, and why would you go back to bed after waking up your kids? She slept until 7:15 a.m, checked on Karlie again, to then find her missing. However, on the Dr. Phil show, her story now changed to be that she'd stayed in Karlie's bed with her all night, watching over her. She claimed to have fallen asleep at 5:30 a.m. and woke up at 7 a.m. to notice that Karlie had gone. She maintains that this version of events is accurate. Melissa and Zach also denied Dr. Phil the contact details for the three said witnesses so that he could interview them himself. They had also initially denied Dr. Phil from listening to the audio recording, claiming that they didn't want the whole world to hear it, which is fair enough. Dr. Phil expressed how it may be useful, however, for him to hear it to help determine what she may have been taken by how she sounded and what she was saying.
I wanted to hear that tape, but you didn't let us hear that tape. Tell me why. I wasn't.
It's an ongoing investigation still. This is
the FBI
ongoing.
have it, the sheriffs have it. It's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna solve the mystery of where she is.
Well, you don't know what I might know or what I might not know. I would very much have liked to have heard that tape. Is there a reason that I didn't hear that tape?
Nobody asked?
No.
No?
Did anybody ask us?
I don't even think anybody
we
asked.
asked. Yeah, we asked because
there's no reason.
I've dealt with every kind of mind-altering drug in the world in 45 years, and I can learn a lot by what part of the brain is involved, whether it's limbic system, whether it's neocortex, what's going on, is it pushed verbalizations, is it confusion? I mean, what's going on? It tells me a lot.
Right.
And I was really interested to hear the tape, but we were told we couldn't have the tape, and I was curious why.
I mean, you can listen to the tape. I don't want the world to listen to the tape.
Oh.
They eventually allowed him to listen. Things just weren't sitting right for the public, nor was it for biological mum Lindsay Fairley, especially once these small discrepancies started coming out. Lindsay claims that she was informed by Zach by being told Karlie was gone, but the use of the word gone instantly didn't sit right with her, viewing the use of terminology a red flag.
Did he say she's gone?
He said she was gone, yes.
Those were the words that he used.
And it stuck out like just a sore thumb.
Huh. Gone.
Gone.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, what did you think gone meant?
Dead. I mean, that's a big word. Gone is, you can't mess with gone. It's either they're gone for good or they're, it just didn't sit right.
He didn't say she's missing, he said she's gone.
Yeah.
She became skeptical of Melissa's story from the beginning, as she claims that she had never heard the full audio recording, even questioning if Karlie had even left the home alive that morning. She suspects that her daughter had an overdose, that maybe they began to panic that they hadn't taken Karlie to the hospital in the first place, and Melissa or Zach disposed of her body. Then the statement with the pair of them seeing Karlie just laid with her eyes wide open further solidified Lindsay's suspicion that Karlie had already passed.
What I think happened is that I believe, and I really don't want to believe this, but I believe my daughter had a freaking drug overdose. And I believe it because she was asking for help. She was asking for them to call. And I believe it. A very early morning, Melissa saw her with her eyes open, and I think that's when my daughter passed.
Lindsay further speculated that witnesses didn't see Karlie at all that morning. She figured that it was Melissa walking down the street, in hopes of people mistaking her for Karlie, and speculated that Karlie was already dead. There's no surveillance cameras on the outside of their house, nor are there any nearby shops or gas stations with CCTV that could have helped with confirming who had left the Guse house, or who was walking around that morning. The discrepancy of the jeans or joggers that Karlie was wearing also played into this theory. Melissa has said that Karlie would never leave the house in joggers, and that she only owns jeans, with Zach also confirming that Karlie doesn't own any joggers. Lindsay has also said that the description Richard gave of the clothing was exactly what Melissa was wearing that day. A white t-shirt and joggers. So maybe the witnesses really did get mistaken, thinking it was Karlie they saw that morning, when it could have actually been Melissa out looking for her stepdaughter. The public would also chime in with their theories and opinions on the case, commenting on Melissa's post and posting in groups. The public's growing suspicion of Melissa prompted authorities to ask for the harassment of the family to stop. In 2021, speculation also arose regarding a particular TikToker and also a different YouTuber, both bearing resemblance to Karlie, making people wonder if they were in fact her. A TikTok account by the name of I'm Having So Much Fun resembled Karlie and had been posting dancing videos. The public considered these dances to have been very strange, and they would give the TikToker instructions, like to touch her hair or to blink if she was in trouble, which she appeared to follow. However, she also had another account on which she said she was fine and that she spoke with an English accent. Monroe County Sheriff's Office posted on their Facebook that they too can see the resemblance to Karlie, but had confirmed with Karlie's family that it wasn't her. Similarly, a YouTube account by the name of Kate Yupp was considered to show resemblances, and for a while it was speculated that she was being held against her will, but again was confirmed not to be the missing 16-year-old Karlie Guse. A couple of months later, in December 2018, bloody underwear was found near Coyote Scat, which was collected for testing. There's only a couple of laboratories in the country which are capable of accurate testing, but unfortunately, they were sent to the wrong facility. The sheriff at the time said they weren't believed to be linked to Karlie. The latest and most promising lead to date was received in 2021 from an ex-drug addict. He claimed to have been feeling guilty knowing what had happened to Karlie, but didn't speak up any sooner as he was a drug addict at the time and feared that he'd get into trouble. He reportedly saw Karlie at a party in Tonopah, Arizona, which is just 2 hours away from Chalfont, and it is one of the first towns you come to when travelling along Highway 6. He had apparently witnessed an incident involving Karlie, but didn't disclose what the incident was. However, he did provide the make, model and location of the car that brought Karlie to that town. The police seized the vehicle and ran it for DNA testing. However, there's still been nothing ever to come from this lead. Friend James Doolin was arrested for providing weed to Karlie that night and pleaded guilty in January 2019 to a lesser-related charge of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Ultimately, the sheriffs remain uncertain whether Karlie ran away, was kidnapped, or if she hid. But ultimately, they never found any incriminating evidence at home. All potential sightings over the years have unfortunately turned out to be false alarms. The mystery of what had happened to Karlie remains unsolved and leaves family and friends yearning for answers. They continue to hold on to hope for her safe return. Karlie loved spending time with her younger brothers, dancing with her friends and watching scary films, and she sounds to have been a ray of sunshine in so many people's lives. If you have any information regarding Karlie's case, please check the description below for the relevant contact information. I'll also pin it in the comments section too. The FBI is currently offering a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to her whereabouts. As a parent myself, I can only imagine the heartbreak and anguish that Karlie's family have endured for all of these years. Hopefully, she will one day return to her family safe and sound.
I've heard somebody say, oh, they give their right arm to save their child, to an abductor or something. I'd give my whole body and soul. I'd give it all up just to have her home safe. That's all I do.
While TikTok and YouTube are flooded with amateur sleuths and psychic theories, today we're focusing on verified facts surrounding Jack's disappearance. On the 1st of March 2024, 22-year-old Exeter University graduate Jack O'Sullivan left his home in Flax Bourton in Somerset, UK at 8:20 p.m. He took a bus to Bristol where he met with 3 friends at Wetherspoons. For those outside of the UK, Wetherspoons is a chain of pubs located throughout the UK and are known for their cheap prices and casual atmosphere. From Wetherspoons, he headed to a birthday party at a flat in the Hotwells area. All was seemingly going well. Jack messaged his mum at 1 a.m, reassuring her that he's okay and not to wait up for him as he'll get a taxi home. But shortly before 3 a.m, on the 2nd of March, Jack left the party alone, beginning a confusing and chilling trail of events. At 5:25 a.m, Catherine woke up and realised that Jack hadn't returned. Instinctively, she knew something was wrong. Catherine and Jack's dad, Alan, tried calling and texting him, but got no reply. At 5:45 a.m, they checked his phone's location,
It pinged at an address on Granby Hill, just a few roads from the last CCTV sighting. His phone then remained active on the network until 6:44 a.m. Catherine and Alan even visited this address in Granby Hill, but Jack wasn't there. They then contacted police. Initially, they were told they would have to wait for their son to be missing for 12 hours before they'd take any action, which I can understand in terms of costs and resources needed, and I'm sure that most people return within those hours. But speaking from the point of view of a mum, this just blows my mind. Imagine your child being missing and you knowing that it's out of character for them, combined with a gut feeling that something isn't right. It would just be absolute torture then having to wait that amount of time before being taken seriously. Not to mention all of those crucial first hours in locating someone just gone. It makes my heart ache to just think about it. But Catherine was frantic by 11 a.m, so police reluctantly took the missing person report. That evening, officers told the family that CCTV showed Jack to be near the river, and they assumed that he'd fallen in. But the next day, a different officer told them not to treat that assumption as fact. This contradiction ignited Catherine's fight to uncover the truth for herself. Jack was spotted walking around on multiple CCTV cameras, possibly looking for a taxi. Some websites state slightly different times for the sightings, but I'm going to go off the times found on findjackosullivan.co.uk, the official website dedicated to his disappearance. So after leaving the party, Jack headed south down Christina Road and was spotted on CCTV at 2:53 a.m, crossing the Junction Swing Bridge. He continued down Brunel Lock Road, spotted again at 2:57, and then down Grenfell Place, which was the last confirmed CCTV sighting of Jack, at 3:17 a.m. Police believe that Jack had fallen into the river at some point on his journey, but Catherine points out the fence next to the river, highlighting it's not possible to just simply fall into the water here. He'd have had to have climbed the fence. Catherine's sheer determination to find her son didn't allow room for this theory. She fought to view CCTV footage that might have captured more of Jack's journey that night, and she was eventually successful in doing so. A figure can be seen here, crossing the Plimsoll Swing Bridge, that Catherine is adamant is Jack by his distinctive walk. Because of the 8 minutes between the CCTV captured around Grenville Place and this image on the bridge, she believes that Jack may have realised that he was heading in the wrong direction when he was alongside the river, and so turned back on himself, then headed along Brunel Way across the bridge. Just moments before this clip, Jack attempted to call a friend who was still at the party. She returned the call 10 minutes later, and Jack answered with a single hello, then silence. The line stayed connected for about a minute, but no other sound was heard. Then finally, at 3:39 a.m, he is spotted again, this time along Bennett Way, Slip Road, possibly heading back to the Hotwells area where the party was. This was the very last potential sighting of Jack. Police pursued their theory of Jack falling into the river, with dive teams searching extensively, including the use of dogs on the water, but their efforts have shown no results. So with no distinctive evidence for this, and especially no body yet found, the family aren't willing to accept this scenario. They are doing everything possible to locate their son and brother, to retrieve any possible answers that they can. Jack was last seen wearing a khaki Barber jacket, a cream lamb's wool knitted jumper, navy chinos, and brown Ralph Lauren trainers. And with him that night, he was carrying all of these items, which include an iPhone 11 in a red case, a Peugeot 108 key fob, and an Apple AirTag in a brown case. None of these items, however, have yet been found. The family thought that his AirTag would solve this case and locate their missing son, but unfortunately reports show that the tag wasn't registered correctly, so it yielded no results. This is despite the family claiming that Jack had showed them it working before he left for the party. Only 3 months in, the family filed a complaint to police for mishandling the case, following their loss of faith in their ability to locate their son. But why? Police had failed to register Jack's case onto the missing persons database for 2 months after his disappearance. Catherine has since had people telling her that they may have had Ring doorbell or even dashcam footage from that night, but because police hadn't issued public requests within 60 days, their footage was tragically overwritten, therefore missing a crucial window of opportunity. On top of this, the areas that the family suggested to search near his last sighting were dismissed as being outside of the perimeter, and police have refused to share areas that they've already searched, as well as Jack's phone data retrieved from his network provider, despite the phone being registered to the parents. All of these missed opportunities led the family to seek help from elsewhere, as well as carry out searches for themselves. At 14 weeks, investigators uncovered a disturbing detail. Private investigators questioned the party guests, and it's not known exactly how it happened, but they revealed that Jack smashed his head against the stairwell. It's unclear how accurate this is, or how significant it may be in Jack's disappearance, but police were unaware of it until then. To this day, Jack still remains missing. There are no confirmed leads, no concrete evidence, and no closure. Catherine believes that her son may have gotten into a car while trying to flag down a taxi. A disappearance in itself is just heartbreaking, but to disappear into thin air without a trace, it's just unimaginable to think what the family are going through. The investigation has since hit a standstill. Jack's story hasn't made mainstream headlines in months, but online, it's people like you keeping this case alive. So please share Jack's story, share his name, his photo, his poster. Let's keep his face seen. Both Catherine and Alan are living any parent's worst nightmare, and with no evidence to say Jack is no longer alive, but equally no information to say where he is, they're feeling stuck. They're convinced that someone must know something, especially with likely 400 vehicles passing through the area while Jack was walking around on the 2nd of March 2024. It's not exactly normal to see someone walking alone between 3 and 4 a.m, something that would likely catch your attention. Someone must have seen something. The family are offering a £20,000 reward in hopes of someone coming forward with vital information in their son's case. If you think you know anything at all, no matter how insignificant you think it might be, please find all of the relevant contact details down in the description and also pinned in the comments. Catherine has said, "Despite being sent messages that we should face reality, that we might not see Jack again, we are not prepared to give up on our son and brother. What family would?" Today's case takes us to the Flathead Indian Reservation in Montana, where vibrant Indigenous mother of two, Jermain Charlo, lived. As the 7th anniversary of her disappearance approaches, her family continues to search for answers, facing countless unanswered questions, no solid leads, and no arrests. On the 15th of June 2018, 23-year-old Jermain went out expecting a night like no other. She visited 3 bars or restaurants, including the Dark Horse, the Golden Rose, and the Badlander. But during the early hours of the 16th of June, she could be seen socialising with several people outside the Badlander. Jermain was being her usual outgoing self, and she just loved to be around people. The bartender from the Badlander observed Jermain dancing, playing pool, and just generally having a good time, while Michael seemed more focused on her. He also recalls that they both seemed sober that night. Shortly after, she was captured leaving the alley by the Badlander with her ex-boyfriend Michael DeFrance, and has not been seen since. Michael DeFrance, the father of her 2 sons Jacob and Thomas, had a tumultuous history with her. 5 years prior to Jermain's disappearance, in April 2013, Michael was arrested and convicted for partner or family member abuse. Jermain told police he had pinned her against the hood of a van and hit her 4 times in the face or head, before throwing her to the ground and spitting on her. This was actually his 2nd conviction of domestic violence, but I believe this incident may have been Jermain's first report of his violence. He was ordered to pay a fine, spend a day in jail, forfeit firearms, and complete 40 hours of a domestic violence treatment programme. 2 more incidents were then reported in 2014, one for an assault on Jermain's aunt and another when he broke Jermain's phone, but was charged for neither. But the abuse and assaults only increased in the year leading up to her disappearance. Jermain was always very active on Facebook, where she became increasingly vocal about her struggles with Michael, sharing horrifying experiences of his abuse, including threats and physical assaults. She'd shared that he would pressure her to stay with him, or he would take their kids, and on another occasion, Jermain refused a kiss from him, resulting in him throwing her against a pull-up bar and choking her. After attending a concert together, Jermain reported Michael to police after he pushed her out of a moving vehicle on Interstate 90, for which he was arrested, but these charges were dropped for unknown reasons. Michael too would post snippets of their toxic situation on Facebook, sharing threats of finding his kids a new mum. The two finally split up in 2017, which led to a custody battle over the kids. Michael was granted residential custody, with Jermain allowed visitation Monday to Friday and every other weekend. She was also ordered to pay $800 in child support, which is considered higher than reasonable given her income at the time. Michael then proposed to another woman later that year, for which Jermain shared her congratulations on Facebook. The chaos seemingly died down, with Jermain finding herself a new job as a bartender at the Big River Cantina in Dixon, and also a new relationship. She met Jacob online and she changed her status on Facebook to in a relationship. Tragically, this would be her final post before her disappearance, only a week later. 2 days before she went missing, Jermain and Michael reportedly attended a monster truck rally together, after which Michael dropped her off at Orange Street Food Farm. Jacob, her new boyfriend, saw her running down an alley towards his own apartment, where she explained that Michael had been yelling at her and asking if she had a boyfriend, while claiming that he wanted to get back together. Jermain wanted to keep her relationship with Jacob secret from Michael and planned to stay at Jacob's apartment the following night after her night out. At the time, Jacob would be away in another state. So, getting back to that night out, and Jermain leaving with Michael as seen in the footage, police obviously questioned Michael, but he had 2 different stories to tell, one of which he told to Jermain's family, and another he told to police. Michael told the family he dropped Jermain off at Orange Street Food Farm, where she was going to meet a girl called Cassidy. But no one knows of a girl called Cassidy, nor heard Jermain talking of a girl with that name, so suspicions were instant. Then he told the police a different story, that he dropped her off about 8 blocks away from Orange Street Food Farm. 11 days later, the first search warrant was executed at Michael's home for Jermain's possessions, including her mobile phone. Photos were taken, but no evidence was seized. Jacob says he called Jermain that night, but he recalls it going straight to voicemail after only a couple of rings, which he thought was really strange and as though someone had actually ended the call. Records later determined that this was correct. The call was intercepted and sent straight to voicemail. What's even more peculiar is that Jermain's phone has never actually been located. Michael initially denied having it, but later admitted to having her phone when she disappeared. But he had destroyed it and disposed of it in Idaho. Also peculiar are the timings. Michael claims to have dropped Jermain off at around 1 a.m. at the Orange Street Food Farm, or thereabouts between the 2 different stories. But then both his and Jermain's phones were tracked to a cell tower miles north in Navarro, close to Michael's home. Reports say her phone remained active here somewhere between 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. So if Michael had dropped her off at 1 a.m, why was her phone pinging miles away? And why did he even have her phone in the first place? And then why would he dispose of it? Initially, detectives assumed Jermain may have been a victim of trafficking. But as time passed, they started to suspect they were dealing with a potential homicide without a body. Over the next couple of months, more search warrants were issued to find Jermain's financial activity and Michael's location from that time. They asked for 10 days of surveillance on his property, using infrared photography and drones. in hopes of maybe finding hidden buildings or bunkers that Michael may move to or visit to tamper with evidence. But no reports have surfaced on this, so it's unknown if the surveillance even ever took place. But the efforts didn't stop on discovering answers. FBI cadaver dogs discovered several items with blood on, which was sent off for analysis, but results came back inconclusive as the blood belonging to Jermain. Sadly, several heart-wrenching years passed with very little new information coming forward, in which time the family never gave up hope on finding Jermain. But in 2021, Michael was indicted on a weapons possession charge after being found with guns. If you remember, he'd lost his right to own firearms after his 2013 domestic violence conviction. He's been sentenced to 21 months in prison and will be supervised for 3 years following his release. While Jermain's family have found a little relief with his incarceration, it's bittersweet that it's not for her now presumed murder. Despite Michael being the last known person to have been with Jermain, he's never been charged with anything to do with her disappearance, which must be so frustrating for the family. Jermain's aunt has experienced very vivid dreams over the years that she considers to be a gift. After her grandma passed away, she had a dream that her grandma visited her to tell her that she had made it. And the same again happened after her grandpa passed away. She's since had a dream that Jermain told her she's found grandma and grandpa and that she is doing just fine. In her dream, her aunt asked Jermain where her body is, to which she replied in Avaro, which is where Michael lived and where her phone last pinged. I don't know if this dream would offer the family comfort or even more frustration, to be honest, but I hope that they can finally get the closure that they deserve. It's just heart-wrenching knowing that her 2 sons are grown up without her, without their mum, who absolutely cherished them. She used to love taking them fishing and spending time down by the river. Unfortunately, Jermain's case isn't isolated. Thousands of Indigenous women and girls go missing every year in the United States. But so many cases go untold and remain unsolved. Let's hope that Jermain's case will defy this tragic trend, bringing the family the answers that they so desperately seek. This case is very much still ongoing, so if you think you might have any information on Jermain's case, please find all of the contact details down in the description and I'll also pin it in the comments. I think there'll be a general agreement in what people believe happened to Jermain that night, or should I say who is potentially to blame. So let me know down in the comments what you think happened to Jermain that night. So this case is actually ongoing with recent developments and leads that we'll get onto very soon. But first, let's start from the beginning. So today's case unfolds in Shelby, North Carolina, where Asha lived with her parents Harold and Aquila Degree, and her older brother O'Brien. The whole family were very close-knit, including their extended family, with life centering around school and church. Asha was a 4th grader at Fullstone Elementary School and a talented basketball player. So just 2 days before Asha's disappearance, she had actually been playing basketball with her team, but unfortunately fouled out and was no longer able to finish the game. They then went on to lose that game, which was their first loss of the season. Asha was devastated. She needed both her mum and her teammates to console her and calm her down, but she seemed perfectly fine about the game by the following day. It's unclear if this incident had any connection to Asha's disappearance at all, but I thought it was still worth mentioning. So the 13th of February 2000 was like any other Sunday. The Degree family attended church together before having lunch at Asha's aunt's house and later returned home. That evening, just before 9 p.m, a power cut hit the neighbourhood due to a car accident from the horrendous stormy conditions that night. Some reports differ slightly with the timings being all over the place, so I'm not entirely sure which are correct, but it said that both 10-year-old O'Brien and 9-year-old Asha were both in bed already by this point. Others claimed that they didn't go to bed until after the power cut. The power came back on between 12 and 12:30 a.m. Harold checked on the 2 kids at 12:30 a.m, and again at 2:30 a.m. to find them both fast asleep both times. The two shared a bedroom, so shortly after this, O'Brien remembers hearing Aisha's bed creak, but he just assumed that she was turning over, so he didn't think too much of it. Aquila woke up at 5:45 to get the kids ready for school. It's said that she got up slightly earlier that morning than normal, as the two needed a bath, as the power cut the night before had stopped them from being able to go in, which again is where the timings are a bit all over the place, as surely if they were already in bed, as some articles claim, the power cut wouldn't have affected them going in the bath. But the timings here aren't particularly important, so let's just move on. Aquila soon discovered that Aisha wasn't in her bed. She checked the rest of the house as she thought maybe she'd already gotten up and maybe gone to the toilet or was getting ready, but she wasn't there. Aquila then checked their cars, but again Aisha was nowhere to be found. Panic then set in. Harold thought that maybe she'd went across the street to her grand's house, but after calling, they learned that she wasn't there either, so they called the police. They noticed Aisha's black backpack was missing, along with some of her favourite items of clothing, including jeans with a red stripe. Why would a 9-year-old pack a bag and leave in the middle of the night, not to mention in the middle of a storm in February? Harold and Aquila married 12 years earlier on Valentine's Day, and little did they know they would be spending their anniversary that year searching for their daughter. Police were quickly on the scene, conducting intensive searches, but their dogs couldn't pick up Aisha's scent, most likely because of the heavy rain that night. Aquila, now desperate, began pacing the streets in her neighbourhood, calling out Aisha's name, but again had no luck. This attracted the attention of neighbours and friends though, so many of them cancelled their plans for the day to help search for 9-year-old Aisha. Reports of the missing girl spread so quickly, which thankfully encouraged a couple of motorists to come forward with sightings, giving investigators a more refined search area. 2 truck drivers noticed a girl wearing white jeans and a white t-shirt walking down Highway 18 in North Carolina between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m. One of the 2 motorists considered it very strange for such a young girl to be out alone at that time of night, so they turned around, but when approaching Aisha, she left the roadside and ran into the woods. This sighting, just 1.3 miles from her home, marks the last known sighting of Asha Degree. Initially, investigators assumed Aisha must have just ran away, but family insisted that this was so out of character for her. She's never ran away before, and there's no clear reason for her to do so. Investigators also stated that she's much younger than a typical runaway child. Generally around the age of 12 is more likely. But looking at this now, 2 decades on, at just 9 years old, the idea of disappearing for over 2 decades without assistance seems implausible. The family also didn't own a computer, as Aisha's parents, both 31 at the time, had fears of online predators, so they kept their children shielded from any outside influences. But it also meant that police didn't have any leads from possible search history. Tragically, nothing belonging to Aisha was found that day. And like in any missing persons case, time is crucial in increasing the chances of finding the person alive, so family were increasingly anxious. However, the following day, investigators thought they were in luck and possibly closer to finding Aisha after sweet wrappers were found in the shed of a business along the highway, close to where Aisha ran into the woods. Along with the wrappers was a pencil, a green marker and a yellow hair bow, all of which were identified as belongings of Aisha. Mysteriously though, there was also a photo of an unidentified black girl, thought to be around the same age as Aisha. To this day, investigators have no idea whose this photo is or who it's of. These items initially remained the only trace of Aisha for over a year. 2 weeks after Aisha's disappearance, search efforts were suspended after extensive searches covering a 2 to 3 mile radius from the highway sighting yielded no further clues. Despite over 9,000 hours of searching with horses, canines, helicopters and even dive teams, the case went cold. Flyers were posted all over the neighbourhood and over 300 leads were submitted, ranging from possible sightings to tips on abandoned houses and wells. But their efforts resulted in no further traces of Aisha. That was until 18 months later, in August 2001, when Asha's backpack was finally discovered. It was found by a construction worker along Highway 18 in Morganton, nearly 25 miles from where she vanished. It was wrapped in 2 black bin bags and buried under the brush and leaves. Upon examination, it contained Asha's name and phone number, the items she had packed, as well as 2 other items that didn't belong to her. One of which was a copy of McElligot's Pool by Dr. Seuss, which was from a school library, and a band t-shirt of New Kids on the Block. The FBI joined the search in 2015, but the details of these 2 items weren't released by the FBI until 2018, 17 years after being found. Surely waiting this long only hinders people's memories, especially of physical objects like those, and potentially delays possible leads. These items were all taken for analysis. We'll get onto the results from these shortly though. Over the years, numerous theories emerged, from a hit-and-run incident to sleepwalking. But in 2016, a new theory and new potential lead surfaced, leading to the FBI requesting the public's help in locating a 1970s-era green Ford Thunderbird or green Lincoln Mark V or something similar. Potential abduction became the new focus after new details arose from a witness who reportedly saw Asha being pulled into a green car, similar to these 2 cars. But all was quiet again in the case for several years. That is until some very recent developments reignited interest in the case. So getting back to Asha's backpack and the analysis results, 2 sets of foreign DNA were revealed on the items within the backpack. The first was a hair matching that of Anna Lee Deadman, who was just 13 years old at the time of Asha's disappearance. And the other set of DNA belonged to Russell Underhill, who was a resident in 2 of the care facilities operated by the Deadman family. So after 25 years, investigators believe that they may finally have potential suspects on their hands related to Asha's disappearance. Within the Deadman family is Roy Deadman, his wife Connie Deadman, and their 3 daughters, Anna Lee, Lizzie, and Sarah. Following this DNA evidence, police issued warrants for the Deadman's properties in September 2024, one of which was on Cherryville Road, just 4 miles or 6 minutes from where Asha was last seen. They retrieved multiple laptops and computers, a human tooth, and also a green 1970 Rambler, which had very similar features to the car Asha was reportedly seen being pulled into. The Deadman daughters, especially Lizzie, who was 16 at the time of Asha's disappearance, would transport their care residents in this car to and from Broughton Hospital. Asha's bag was found just 10 minutes from Broughton Hospital. Unfortunately, if Russell Underhill did have any involvement in Asha's disappearance, he has since taken this to the grave, as he passed away in 2004. The Deadman's attorney has too alluded to Russell potentially being to blame for this abduction and potential homicide. But is he just trying to veer away from the real culprits and pass the blame to someone who was already passed? Further investigation, however, is still ongoing into the Deadman family. Investigators now believe that Asha may have been murdered and her body concealed, with the possibility of the teenage Deadman daughters having involvement. But investigators say that they would have required adult assistance, potentially from their mum or dad, to conceal the evidence. Despite Anna Lee's DNA being present on Asha's belongings, their main focus has shifted to sisters Lizzie, who was 16 at the time, and Sarah, who was 15, also along with their dad Roy, who was now in his 80s. A man came forward saying he used to attend parties with the 2 sisters and recalls Lizzie being visibly distressed and intoxicated. He said that at one point Lizzie said, "I killed Asha Degree." Her sister Sarah then abruptly told her to shut the fuck up, which he says caught him off guard, as Sarah was always normally very calm and nice. This witness was given a polygraph test, and although polygraph results are inadmissible in court in North Carolina, he is said to have passed the test, claiming he is 100% confident in his memory of those moments. Additionally, investigators have revealed some concerning text messages between Lizzie, her sister Sarah, and Lizzie's ex-husband. I'll post them on screen briefly, but feel free to pause the video to read them. Within them, Lizzie messages Sarah after talking to the family lawyer. The theory is I did it. Accident. Covered it up. A neighbour of Roy allegedly saw him digging a chest-deep hole several years ago and stated that at least 2 or 3 rooms in his home containing personal belongings are padlocked. The family claim, though, that they have no involvement in Asha's disappearance and no charges or arrests have yet been made. To this day, no remains of Asha have ever been found, with her whereabouts still a complete mystery decades later. Asha is fondly remembered as Shelby's sweetheart, a light-hearted and funny little girl, always in pigtails and always happy, who loved basketball and spending time with her brother O'Brien. Asha's parents hold on to hope and believe their daughter is still alive. Her mum has said, "Until you bring me proof beyond 99.9% that my daughter is dead, I'm going to believe she's alive." A billboard appealing to help find Asha now stands where Asha was reportedly seen running into the woods, which the family host an annual walk to in hopes of drawing attention to Asha's case. If you maybe have any potential information that may assist in this ongoing investigation, please find the contact details in the description and also pinned in the comments. As this case is very much still active, hopefully these new leads may finally bring some answers to the Degree family. Be sure to follow me over on Instagram where I'll post real-time updates on this case. But what are your thoughts on this case? Do you think Asha ran away, or do you think the Deadman family have something to hide? Joanne Cooper was raised in Auburn, Washington, with her 3 sisters, Maxine, Alice, and Glenna Ray. In the 1940s to 1950s, they all attended Adventist Academy, which was a strict religious school that Joanne despised. She couldn't wait to graduate. Despite her rather sheltered upbringing, Joanne was always a vibrant spirit. Tall, slender, and glamorous, she attracted attention wherever she went. I'm unsure of the exact dates, but Joanne married a man that she went to school with, to whom she had 2 children, a son named Bobby and a daughter called Holly. Tragically though, Holly passed away due to sudden instant cough syndrome, or SIDS. This led to a tumultuous affair and ended in divorce. It's unknown how, but in the mid-50s, Joanne then met Robert Hansen, and they quickly married, with some sources stating in 1956 and some in 1957. Shortly after, they welcomed 3 children, Nick, Candy Kay and Ty, between 1957 and 1959. To understand Robert a little more, let's delve into his childhood. Raised in Eugene, Oregon, on a dairy farm with 5 siblings, Robert faced a harsh upbringing. His parents worked tirelessly just to support their 6 children. With this came chores around the farm. As a young teen, Robert was expected to milk the cows before dawn, often not having enough time to change before school, which resulted in him attending with cow manure on his trousers. His classmates would often humiliate him, calling him names, but if he failed to complete the task at all, or he didn't do it fast enough, his father would beat him black and blue. Robert's parents later separated, so his mum could work in Seattle. His brother and 4 sisters went to live with his mum, and she opened a little bakery. Robert, however, moved to Washington with his dad. They started from scratch on what he called a stump farm, which he absolutely hated. He described the work, clearing the land, as backbreaking, but he also learned basic skills in carpentry, which later in life would prove very valuable. Robert never felt he could please his dad, with his dad often asking him, why couldn't he be more like his older brother Kenneth? So after graduating high school, he left to join the army. This wasn't long-lived though, leaving several years after to travel far north, where he found a job on fishing ships in Alaska. It was then following the birth of his children that he then left Alaska to be back home with his family, as he would often be away for months. Instead, he began an apprenticeship as a carpenter in the South King County area. Once home, Robert planned and did eventually build a bigger house for his family. He also looked for cheap homes to build that he'd rent out to cover the mortgage. His two sons, Nick and Ty, would help to paint the empty rentals. It soon became apparent, though, that he wasn't a very understanding landlord. If his tenants' payments were as little as a few days late, he would bang on their door and tell them to get out immediately. He didn't care for a 30-day warning or to listen to any of their excuses. And as a tall, large man, he intimidated so many people. Normally, a father returning home to a family would be a blessing, a second set of helping hands, especially while raising 3 children. But not in the Hansen household. His toxic presence was a nightmare. Robert regularly battered Joanne, even during her pregnancies. During the birth of her youngest child, Ty, the midwife was appalled by the bruises across her breasts. Robert would be careful about his placement, ensuring only to leave marks in areas that aren't easily seen, like her torso and her thighs. Joanne often wouldn't tell her best friend, Patricia Martin, about the horrendous things that were happening behind closed doors, but she finally confided in her when the burden became too frightening. Pat had a horrific glimpse at Joanne's reality. When Joanne's eldest son, Bobby, was 6 or 7 years old, he was in a store with Robert and asked for some fizzy pop or soda. Robert asked Bobby what the drink was called over and over, but Bobby couldn't read at the time, so he simply couldn't tell his stepdad what it was. When they returned home, Robert took Bobby to the basement and beat him. Joanne called and asked Pat if she could go over to her home, where she explained everything that happened. Bobby was so severely beaten, Joanne had to carry him into a friend's home. Pat kindly said that they could stay with her, so Bobby stayed with Pat for 2 months. Following this incident, though, Bobby's biological dad sought full custody of his son, and Joanne felt that she had no other choice but to let him go. All she wanted was for her children to be safe. Feeling trapped, Joanne lacked the financial means to leave Robert. He had his wife exactly where he wanted her. He was cruel and controlling, and so many people knew it. Pat and Joanne had been planning to go out one evening together. Joanne had spotted some feather earrings that would match her red dress perfectly. Pat encouraged her to buy them, but Joanne was so hesitant, knowing that Robert would rage. Joanne had to ask permission to buy anything at all, so Pat said that she would say that she had bought the earrings, finally convincing Joanne to make the purchase. However, when Joanne told her husband this and that Pat had bought the earrings, he'd already seen the receipts, so he knew his wife was lying. He ended up throwing her around the room. Robert was a fishing and hunting fanatic and would often trophy his killings through photos or displaying them up on his wall. At one point, he'd taken a hunting trip with 9 other men, but by the end of the trip, every single person hated Robert. They saw his controlling side immediately. He had to plan every meal, he had to cook the food, and if somebody else did the cooking, he had to tell them how to do it. He decided when they would eat and what they would eat, and also where to fish. He literally had to control everything. Joanne just lived her life tiptoeing around her husband, which is no way to live at all. Worried that she'd anger him in any moment, as he'd just explode with no warning. She'd never truly know what would trigger him. And their children also quickly realised that their dad's mood was so unpredictable and often violent. On another occasion, in May 1962, they were sat down at the table together eating trout that Robert had recently caught. Joanne didn't like the skin though, so she moved it to the side of her plate. But like we've just said, not knowing what would trigger him, and it often being the slightest of things, this was one of those moments. It angered him, and he demanded his wife to eat the skin. She refused, claiming it would make her sick, so he hit her, knocking her off the bench and onto the floor. Robert left the room briefly before returning with a gun. He showed it to his kids and told them, "This is what we're going to kill Mommy with." Understandably, this absolutely traumatised Joanne, so she confided in Pat again, expressing her fear that her husband may one day kill her. The day after this, Robert left for work on the construction site, so Joanne knew that she had a bit of time, and she fled the home to go into hiding. Again, she went to Pat's house with the 3 kids, and this time she hid the car elsewhere, so Robert couldn't see where she was staying. Joanne filed a restraining order against Robert, preventing him from being able to go near her. This gave her a little glimmer of hope, so she also went through with filing for a divorce. Her attorney asked if she had any marks on her body from the beatings. Joanne lifted her top and pulled down her bottom slightly, revealing a horrendous sight. There was a huge bruise and many smaller bruises across her ribs, breasts and thighs, mainly down her left side. Her attorney was absolutely gobsmacked by the horror of what he was seeing. This just made him even more determined to help with the divorce from her cruel husband. Robert, too, hired a lawyer and fought furiously over the division of assets. If there was anything at all that Robert was going to fight for, it was all of his material possessions. Joanne had signed a prenup kind of agreement when they married, preventing her from any access to the 4 properties that he already owned at the time. By the time of the divorce, though, he owned significantly more, so typically he also didn't want her having access to those either. Robert tried to make his wife's life hell, harassing her and even upsetting her by giving their 3 young children, all under the age of 5, a lit cigarette. How fucked up was this man? Eventually, on the 8th of August 1962, Joanne's attorney filed for an even tougher restraining order, in attempts of protecting her from being located by Robert and preventing him from entering their home. Once again, this filled her with further relief and a bigger sense of security. Joanne was still living at Pat's house, but following the tougher restraints, Pat suggested she return to her own home to live the life she deserves, free of stress, worry and drama. After all, the two of them felt more reassured now that the restraining order was in place, trusting that it would protect Joanne, but she would later regret this advice for the rest of her life, despite at the time feeling like it was the best advice that she could give. So on the 10th of August, 2 days after the tougher restraints, and convinced that all would be fine, Joanne headed back to her home, with the agreement to call Pat when she arrived. At the time, Robert was living in one of his properties several blocks away. Joanne reassured Pat that everything was fine, and there was no sign of her husband when she got there. But just moments later, she was heard saying, "Oh my God, he's in the basement. He's coming." Joanne then screamed the most horrendous scream that Pat had ever heard. And the line went dead. Pat frantically called Joanne back, hoping that her friend had managed to escape. But after half an hour of trying, Robert finally answered the phone. She asked where Joanne was and if she could speak to her, but he responded calmly saying, "Stop the crap. You know she's with you." Pat just didn't know what to do. She so badly wanted to call the police, but her husband, who worked in law enforcement, discouraged her. He knew fine well that a person needed to be missing for 48 hours before a missing person report could even be filed, so it just felt pointless. The following day, Joanne had made plans to meet up with her mum and 3 sisters at the World's Fair in Seattle, but when she didn't show to that, concerns grew even more. Joanne wasn't allowed contact with her own family under Robert's orders, so she just jumped at the opportunity to meet up with them, now that she was finally fleeing her controlling husband. Given this news, Pat called Joanne's attorney and he called the police. He persuaded them to send out an all-points bulletin if she didn't show up within the next 24 hours. Pat became impatient, however, so she too called the police. She was convinced that Robert had killed her best friend during that half an hour of unanswered calls, but she was told that they couldn't investigate possible homicide victims with no body to validate the murder. Joanne has never been heard from since. Robert reported his wife missing 5 days later on the 15th of August. Obviously, he didn't want to look bad by not reporting at all and becoming the primary suspect to her disappearance. Weeks after Joanne disappeared, her Chevrolet was found in Seattle's Queen Anne Hill neighbourhood with flat tyres and the windows rolled down. The inside was absolutely filthy. There were cigarette butts, empty bottles, and Pat claimed that this was just so unusual. Joanne would always keep her car so clean. There were no usable fingerprints, and the car showed no signs of foul play or any indication of where Joanne could be. Unfortunately, DNA testing was still 30 years in the future, so an extensive search of the area was conducted, which showed no trace of her. Robert denied ever threatening or harming Joanne and reckoned she was still alive, but that she left due to her emotional instability and that she wished not to proceed with the divorce action. To the outside world, he successfully portrayed himself as a man whose wife selfishly ran away to follow her own dreams, while leaving him alone to raise their 3 abandoned children. And the kids grew up believing their mum had abandoned them. Robert cruelly told them that she'd ran off with another man, that she didn't care about them, and that she would never be back. They were just 5, 4, and 2 years old at the time of their mum's disappearance. Obviously, they were too young to know otherwise, and would tragically endure many years of abuse at the hands of their dad, emotionally and physically. He would always hire loads of different babysitters to care for them, until they were old enough to literally fend for themselves. Joanne's attorney still continued to work on the divorce, despite her absence and not even knowing if she was even still alive. This was finally granted on the 21st of November 1962. Despite trying to stop Joanne receiving any of the assets, she was granted 40% of the marital assets, and if she didn't return alive, they would be put into a trust fund for the 3 children. But as you could probably guess, the kids didn't receive this fund, as Robert had his lawyers prevent the release. Only Candy Kay received a property, which we will come to very soon. The judge also found sufficient evidence suggesting that he was abusive towards his wife. Searchers never showed any leads, so Joanne was declared legally deceased 13 years later in 1975. Many years following the divorce and disappearance, Ty, the youngest of the 3 children, wanted to know more about his missing mum and the truth behind her disappearance. He delved into the divorce records, which showed his mum as a completely different character to what his dad had painted her to be. He was also shocked to learn of the abuse towards her, although he also wasn't surprised, as he'd experienced it himself. The more he learned, the more he felt a gut instinct and a need to seek justice for his mum. Realising that she vanished just 2 days after filing for divorce from her cruel and abusive husband, Ty could see through the lies of abandonment that they were told for so many years, and now believed that his dad had in fact killed his mum. He doesn't think that she ran away when he was just 2 years old after all. He sought the challenge to seek justice and find the truth for his mum. A couple of different rumours surfaced speculating where her remains may be hidden, one being in the foundations of an apartment on Kent Des Moines Road, a property that Robert had actually moved his 3 children into in their mid to late teens. Another theory was that her body had been buried around a farm or a barn that Robert had once owned. The floor was originally a dirt floor, but soon after Joanne disappeared, Robert poured concrete all over it. The barn was later demolished and paved over by a major state highway. Thinking she may now be under the highway, in 2006, Ty had further searches conducted here. These efforts included cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and even the excavation of a portion of the road. Once again, though, all the results were negative. The Green River also runs along here, that some have even speculated may be where she could be buried alongside it somewhere. But searchers once again just have not revealed anything. Joanne's parents also hired a private investigator, but they too have been unable to locate Joanne. As with many violent and abusive upbringings, the 3 children, Nick, Candy Kay and Ty, all had their struggles through life, especially under their dad's oppressive rule. Ty described it as just the 3 of them against their dad to survive, and that they all sought affection from their friends, as Robert had no empathy at all. All were very attractive and intelligent. Nick was considered to be a musical genius, playing many wind instruments, including the flute, the clarinet and the saxophone. But Robert didn't approve of his musical aspirations. Robert expected Nick to be a sportsman and forced him to play baseball, which Nick hated. He didn't enjoy sports as he simply didn't feel he was very good at them. He went on to graduate 3rd in his class at Kent Meridian High School and worked really hard towards a maths degree at the University of Washington. He realised it was easier just to stay out of his dad's way, so he later joined the Navy. Nick had always felt wrong in his own body, and was convinced that he was supposed to be a girl. He was intrigued by what women do and how they think. His dad caught him one day trying on a dress, which only enraged Robert. Robert very much felt like men are meant to be strong and tough, not wearing dresses. So this resulted in Nick receiving a beating. Nick felt he needed to confess these desires to his girlfriend at the time before proposing marriage. She was really understanding and she loved Nick for who he was, and so they later married and had 2 daughters together. Unfortunately, they later divorced, but they remained good friends. Nick later underwent surgery in Thailand to finally live the life that he always felt he needed to. She returned to America as Nicole. Candy K was known as her dad's favourite. She grew up in the world of beauty pageants, which Robert really approved of, and she won quite a few. But unfortunately, she dabbled in and out of substance usage. Candy became depressed after placing 3rd for Miss Washington, so she turned back to her addiction. Robert gave her one of his apartments to live in at the age of just 16. She didn't go to college, and she quickly became bored of working in fast food restaurants. Instead, she started dancing, mainly topless and sometimes completely naked, in disco spots close to Army and Air Force bases. Along the way, she met Ron Wakefield. He was considered a bad boy, which Candy found really exciting. The 2 married, and he introduced her to stronger substances. Her brother Ty recalls that Candy went downhill fast with Ron dragging her down with him. The 2 just became junkies looking for heroin. Ron had a warrant out for his arrest though, and police finally caught up with him. With Ron now gone, Candy found a job as a cocktail waitress in a casino. She was 25 years old at the time, who was the manager of the casino. He was 60 years old, nearly as old as her dad, but the 2 started dating and eventually moved in together in Wendover, Utah. He was a much better influence on Candy, supporting her in getting fully clean from drugs, and even asked Robert for his permission to marry his daughter. Robert approved, but the 2 never did marry. Unfortunately, Candy relapsed in 1986 and got into prescription drugs. Tom was furious. After all the support he'd offered to help her get clean, and the 2 ended up arguing. Candy then called Ty and asked him to pick her up, and she stayed in a hotel back at home in Des Moines, Washington. Ty had planned to meet Candy the following day for some food, but when he hadn't heard from her by noon, he became really concerned. He drove to the hotel where she was staying, and he noticed police outside. At the time, he didn't think anything of it though. That was until he was approaching her hotel room. He noticed police swarming the outside of her room, and when he managed to peek in, he saw his sister's lifeless body just laid there. She was discovered by the maid and had passed hours before from an overdose of black tar heroin. Ty, the youngest of the 3, received the brunt of Robert's anger. Nick says that Ty wasn't liked or wanted by their dad, as Ty irritated him the most, in turn resulting in being punished the worst, and he has the scars to show it. Robert wanted Ty to work in construction just as he did, but Ty hated it. Instead, he lived a life of selling and repairing cars, and he also later married. He had a stepdaughter, and he went on to have another baby girl with his wife. Nick and Ty would often send photos of their daughters to their dad, but Robert would send them back unopened. He didn't want to know anything about them. Ironically, the 2 boys felt that they had to please their dad, just like Robert did with his dad. Eventually though, both Nick and Ty came to realise that there was just no point. There was no pleasing their heartless father, and so they walked away. Robert's determination to have control over his kids eventually drove them all away from him, but from it they did come to realise that they had dreams of their own that they'd like to pursue, not in sports or in construction. Eventually, Ty built up the courage to confront his dad. He was estranged to Robert by this point, so what did he have to lose? He visited his dad's house several times between 2005 and 2006, trying to delve deeper and find some truths about his mum's story. He told Robert, "I think you killed my mum. I think you're a liar and a murderer and a coward." all Ty would get back is swearing and told to get off his property. Robert never really seemed all that concerned or fazed that his wife had disappeared. Ty claims that he would never actually deny the murder, but he also refused to talk about the disappearance while growing up. On the 4th of August 2006, exactly 47 years and 6 days after Joanne's disappearance, Ty received a phone call from the Kings County Coroner Office informing that his dad had committed suicide. Had everything become too much for him? His children now pressuring him over their mum's disappearance all those years ago. They'd been robbed of a mother for nearly of their entire life. Had that day in particular maybe been significant to him? A neighbour had found him behind the steering wheel of his car, with the windows fogged up. He passed of asphyxiation from carbon monoxide at 84 years old. Robert didn't receive any charges at all for his wife's disappearance, despite Ty later discovering that the police had strong suspicions it was him all along. They just never had strong enough evidence to arrest him. Robert's estate left behind was worth millions, but the cruel, heartless man already had that planned out too. In his will, he had wrote that his wife had disappeared years ago, and that she was not to receive anything from him should she reappear. He also denied his children of any inheritance. Instead, he left it to a friend in Costa Rica that he had met long after his wife's disappearance. Ty then embarked on a really unusual move. He filed a wrongful death suit against his deceased father, alleging him of causing his mum's death. His main motivation was to make his mum's story heard and noticed, to finally seek some closure and justice for her. The family have hoped that someone would finally come forward and break the silence after all of these heartbreaking years of torment. Ty's attorney believes that someone would be more comfortable coming forward, knowing now that Robert is already dead. Joanne's case remains shrouded in mystery, but hopefully one day the Hansen family will finally receive any hidden truths. Joanne's story deserves to be heard. That is everything that I have on this particular case. Let me know what you think. Did you think it could be Robert all along?